We are live, and I am here with Derek Timmons. We are super excited today to be chatting about some real life stuff and some real life things that a lot of people don't really talk about. Um, Derek's a person who's been through addiction and has come out the other side. So today's conversation will essentially focus on his journey to sobriety, the challenges he has faced, strategies that have helped him overcome, and some advice for others who might be struggling with addiction themselves or have family members struggling, and hope that, by sharing his story with others, it'll help them find hope and inspiration and maybe give them just some motivation to maybe get a little bit motivated to get on the right path. So thank you for being here. I'm super excited. I know only a little bit of your background. I actually don't know the whole story because I haven't listened to I know you've been on a couple other podcasts with your story. So enlighten us on, I guess. Okay, so I've got questions. I wrote down questions. So let me start with questions. So basically, just tell us about your background and how addiction became part of your life.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure and an honor to get an opportunity to be on your podcast. And I want to commend you on the fact that you have a podcast, because I know it's a huge commitment, and it takes a lot of time to get going and get some momentum with it. But I think the topic of your podcast is amazing, and a lot of people need to hear this stuff. And it is very underserved in our world, because a lot of people do struggle not only just with addictions, but just with like life challenges and complications. And it's not an easy go out there for a lot of people. So I think we do need to normalize talking about this stuff and mental health and all of that. So kudos to you, and thank you for having me. It's been I'm really excited about this opportunity.
So I guess we'll start with the addiction itself. Maybe what substance was it, and how did it come about? What was maybe the triggering parts of that?
So my addictive life and my addictive personality began when I was really young. I believe that I was born an addict. I identify as an alcoholic. Drugs were definitely a big part of my story, and I'm going to get into that for sure. But alcohol was my master. It was my main, it was the starting point. It was my everything. Everything revolved around my drinking, when I could drink, what I would be drinking, where I'd be drinking, who I would be drinking with, towards the end, right? But again, I believe that I was born with this illness. I also now, after 8 years of sobriety, which my sobriety date is December 16th, 2014, which is
Amazing.
Crazy to me now.
Amazing.
I remember thinking like going through 4 hours without any drugs or alcohol was so nuts. And now I actually just recently passed 3,000 days.
Amazing.
It's so cool. And thank you. But so in the beginning, I didn't believe it was an illness. Now I do believe it's an illness. It's just an illness that we can't really describe to people. Like when someone has cancer, you can identify it, you can see it, you can remove it. It's something that they didn't ask for, but now they have it. Same thing with all these different types of diseases and illnesses, but
you can test for it. Like there's a test, right?
Yeah,
there's blood work.
Totally. Yeah, there's no litmus paper to show that you're an addict. It's and people don't really fully understand that someone that's suffering with addiction is suffering with a disease and an illness that they can't control. But I believe that I was born with it. I believe now that the illness of addiction is a mental, physical, and spiritual illness, that all three things combined work against me. I am absolutely powerless over alcohol. When I ingest alcohol into my body, my liver, now this has been scientifically proven throughout the years of study, but my liver as an addict, or an alcoholic, actually digests alcohol differently than a normal person. Which I found incredibly fascinating when I was about 2 years sober and I started really looking into this. And I'm going to screw this up, so I'm not going to get deep into the science side of it. But when alcohol is digested, it gets split into ethanol and sugar. And so normal people, their body will take the sugar, put it into their blood, use it as energy, and the ethanol will dissipate through their bloodstream over a certain amount of time.
Right.
When alcoholic, when they're liver digests alcohol, the ethanol doesn't digest as fast. So it stays in your bloodstream for a longer period of time and it creates
Okay.
a craving. So the first drink tells you need another
Starts it.
drink.
Yeah.
And then the ethanol starts to compound on top of each other, and that's what causes the craving. So I have this physical craving that comes over my body that I don't understand, that I can't comprehend, and now all of a sudden it's like when I start drinking, I physically cannot stop. Like I heard someone say recently that I'm not an alcoholic because I drink too much. I'm an alcoholic because I can't drink enough. People
Right.
would say to you all the time, like, well, you must be an alcoholic, you drink too much. And it's like, one drink is too many because 1,000 is not enough. Once I get
Right.
going, I was always the last person up. I was always the first person starting. I would wake up after a night of going hard and I would drink all the half full beers and the bottoms of a 2.6 and things like that. And every now and then you'd drink a can with cigarette butts and it would be disgusting. But like, for a 23 or 24-year-old kid, that's not normal to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, still drunk from the night before, and continue drinking until the liquor store opened and then walk there or skateboard there to get more booze. Like,
Yeah.
so I recognized early in my life that there was something not right. And I went to my first AA meeting when I was 22. And it was super awkward and it was super weird. And I judged everybody because I'm better than them and I know more than them. And they're fucked up and I'm not fucked up. And like, I have a job. Thank you very much. I pay my bills and I don't drink the way you guys drink. So obviously there's something wrong with you, but I'm fine. And I think the truth was at the time, I just wasn't ready to accept that I had to live a different way. I didn't want to think there's anything wrong with me. And I don't think anyone does, but so in and out of the program for about 8 years, when I became a father, I thought, okay, well, this is it. This will straighten me out. I was 24 at the time, almost 25. And I remember holding my son in my arms when he was first born, and he fit between my wrist and my elbow. And I held him in my arms for 4 hours. And it was the first time in my life that I ever loved another human more than I actually loved myself. Or not that I loved myself, but I cared about another human more than I cared about my own bullshit. And I made a promise to my son the day he was born that I was going to be the best dad that this world has ever seen. And I broke that promise. Yeah, I broke that promise within a day. I wasn't a good dad. And I look back on it now and I realize it. But at the time, I thought I was amazing. But the first family outing that his mom and I were about to have, he would have been about 2 months, maybe 3 months old. And he was born in January. So finally, we had a really nice spring day or whatever. And we were going to go for a walk. Well, I went into the garage and I had a bottle of Kahlua. And I slammed like 3/4 of the bottle within 15 minutes. And I came back into the house and I was loaded. And she couldn't believe it. And I remember the look on her face was just disgust. And I still thought that I was doing nothing wrong. So over the course of time, we broke up. At the time when we broke up, I thought it was all her fault. She was this evil person who couldn't see what she was losing. Alcoholics tend to be very selfish people, very selfish, self-centered people. We're master manipulators as well. Or we can be. And so anyways, we broke up and she took basically full custody of my son. And I got to see him every second weekend. So when that happened, I really went on a downward spiral because I had nothing left to fight for.
Yeah.
She had all the furniture. She had everything. She had the kid. And I was in construction. So all my buddies did drugs and drank. And now I had nothing to stop me. And so I really, really badly went on this downward spiral. And then I got about in 2013, I got about 2 months sober. And if you're not watching this video, I'm putting sober in air quotes if you're just listening to the audio, because I stopped drinking during that time, but I was still smoking pot. So in my mind, I was sober because pot was fine. And I didn't realize that pot had an even deeper grip on me than drinking did, because it was something I did all day, every day. I would wake up in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, and the first thing I would do after I went to the washroom is roll a joint, get stoned. But anyways, during this 2-month period, I didn't drink, and I thought to myself, well, clearly I'm fine. I'm not an alcoholic because I just went 2 months without a drink. And I went to a buddy's house that, I don't know, at some point in time, I went to a buddy's, and I wasn't telling anyone that I was going to AA, and I was just avoiding people so I wouldn't let them know that I wasn't drinking. And anyways, I went to a buddy's and he's like, "Do you want a drink?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. I'll just have one." And that night I successfully had just one drink. But about 2 nights later, I had another drink. And then the next night I had a couple more drinks. And before I knew it, I was drinking full time again. I was drinking every day. Varying amounts every day. I mean, I did make an effort as a father. When I was with my son, I would try my hardest to stay sober, and I did engage with him the best I could. We had a lot of fun, but I was a Disneyland dad. I remember his mom getting pissed off at me all the time, being like, "You're not here to do the parenting thing. You're not raising this kid. You're not packing lunches. You're not folding underwear. You're just the Disneyland dad." And that used to drive me mental because I didn't feel like I was. But now I look back at it, I'm like, yeah, I had him every second weekend, and it was just fun time. Like, I didn't have rules. I didn't have structure. We ate pizza and whatever we wanted. I went to movies and stayed up late and had tons of sugar. And it wasn't what a real parent is supposed to do. So anyway, and then I remember in October of 2014, I put my son to bed, and it was, I don't know, whatever time a 5-year-old goes to bed. So like 8:30, 9 o'clock, maybe at the latest on a Saturday. And I had a 40-pounder of rum on the counter. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm just going to have a couple drinks and then I'll go to bed. I stayed up to like 3 o'clock in the morning. I drank 3/4 of the 40, and I passed out and I was dead to the world. Well, my son, who was 5 at the time, woke up at some point in time, probably tried to wake me up, unsuccessful, and then went and made himself a bowl of cereal and was watching Pokemon. And I woke up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and he had been sitting there for who knows how long by himself, unsupervised. And there was like milk and cereal all over the counter. And I was like, oh my God, like
Matilda moment.
he could have seriously hurt himself. He could burn the house down or whatever. And so at that point in time, I really tried to make a focused effort to stop drinking. And so I went for all of October and all of November, and I couldn't stop. No matter what I did, I was like, I would wake up in the morning and I would swear to God, whatever God was still willing to listen to my bullshit. I would make this, this emphatic, like just desperate plea for like, just please, just give me, just help me. Like today I'm not drinking, like on my son's life. I will not touch a drop of booze today. And if you would have had a lie detector on me when I said it at the time, it would have told you that I was telling the truth, because I believed it. I was like, no, that's it. Today, that's the final straw. And I mean, I'd wake up feeling like garbage, like I was going to die. And then, you'd go to work, and then by 10 o'clock, you'd have drank about, a half a liter or a liter of water, and you got a sandwich in you. And by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you're like, well, I'm starting to feel better. I'm starting to feel human again. And then all of a sudden 3 o'clock rolls around, and you're thinking about that promise you made to yourself to never drink again. And I'm thinking to myself, never drink again? That seems a little excessive. That seems a little unreasonable. Yeah. I think I'm going to contemplate that decision by having just a couple beers tonight. And then that cycle of insanity just kept going.
Yeah.
So it ended for me. So on December 14th, 2014, I went out it was a Sunday night. I went out to a pub with the intention to get, let me back that up. On December 13th, 2014, I was going to hang myself, which is something that I don't tell people very often. I went into my garage. I had a rope hanging in the rafters, and I was ready to die. I just wanted it all to end. And, I had a 40-pounder of vodka and a picture of my kid. And there's this song that I really like. I don't know. I don't like it anymore, but I used to like it. And it's called Born to Lose. And the lyrics go, born to lose. I live my life in vain. All my dreams have only caused me pain. All my life, I've always been so blue, born to lose. And now I'm losing you. And, I just kept singing this song, and I kept looking at his picture, and I kept thinking, this world's better without me, and he's better without me. And I was ready to kill myself, and I had this vision I don't think I've ever fucking told the story before, so I apologize.
No, that's good. This is amazing.
I had this vision that my son was 22 or whatever, and he was doing drugs and he was drinking, and he said to his buddy, my dad was a piece of shit that killed himself when I was 5. And at that moment, I snapped out of it. I had my first experience of what I thought was God, or what I now look back and see that God entered my life. And I immediately became sober. I came out of this blackout, realized where I was and what was happening, and I stumbled into my house. And I woke up the next day and I made the same promise that I would never drink again. And that night I went drinking again. And it was bad that night. I was supposed to go. I was like, hey, just two beers and one burger, and I'll go to work or I'll go to sleep. I'll be at work early. And I ended up on this bender, and I woke up in some house where I didn't know where I was. And I got home finally. I couldn't find my truck, and I finally got home, and my hands were shaking like a leaf. And I was lying in bed, and I texted a guy. Oh, the night when I was drinking, sorry, it's been so long, but when the night before, when I was drinking, on my last night drinking, the day after I tried to kill myself, I sent a text to a buddy of mine who I thought I was texting my buddy Dallas, but below his name, there was a guy from Dallas, and it said Dallas AA, and anyone that I ever met from AA, I don't get their last name, so I just put them in my phone as like Michelle AA, because we're anonymous. So I accidentally texted this guy from AA. In a total blackout, and he was like, hey man, how you doing? I haven't heard from you for so long, blah blah. And it was a total freak mistake. And so then the next morning when I'm lying in bed and I'm trembling, I'm shaking like a leaf, he sends me a text to see how I'm doing, and I'm like, oh shit. Now I gotta lie to this guy and tell him that everything's great, right? And he's like, how's things going? And I'm thinking to myself, I can't lie anymore. I'm like, not good, man. I'm not in good shape at all. And he's like, you should go to a meeting tonight. And I'm like, which one? He's like, this one. I'll meet you there. So I met him there, and that night, so that was December 15th, 2016. And I've been sober ever since. So the reason that I consider my sobriety date as December 16th is because on the morning of the 15th, I woke up and I drank a few beers and I smoked some pot before I went home while I was looking for my truck, which doesn't make any sense. And so I went that day to that meeting, and I met this old guy who approached me about being my sponsor, and he just wouldn't let me have any other options. He was like, you're going to meet me for a coffee tomorrow. All I want you to do is sit and hear me out. And he sat me down. He slapped step 1 in front of me, and he told me, like, look, kid, you're in rough shape. You're not going to make it much longer. I'm still thinking in my head, I'm fine. Whereas 2 days prior, I was about to hang myself. And he just didn't let me have any other options. He said, this is what you're going to do. If you want to live and be a father and be a good man, you need to do what I tell you. And he gave me his boundaries if I was going to work with him. I was like, who does I think he is? Like, doesn't he know how great I think I am? Right.
Yeah.
And, but I did what I was told, and I started going to meetings, and I went to meetings every day, and I started working my steps and working a program of recovery. And through that process, I met a lot of amazing people, and I never wanted to stay sober. I said, okay, I'll do this for 2 weeks. I'll do this for 2 weeks until the hangovers stop and the shaking goes away, and I can learn how to drink like a normal person. And 2 weeks in, I saw this guy who got his 30-day chip, and I was like, oh man, I really want one of those chips. So I was like, I'll hang out for 2 more weeks until I get that chip, just to say I did it. And then I can say I'm fine because I went a month without a drink. And then by that time, like the people, the support, the love that I was given, and all the things that happened started to take effect. And then I was like, I'm going to stick around for another couple days. And I always just told myself, I'll drink on Friday. I'll drink on Friday. And then when Friday would come around, I'd say, I'll drink next Friday. I kept saying that. I'll drink next Friday. I'll drink next Friday. And then all of a sudden I got to 2 months. And on the day I went to a meeting on my 2 month, I got my 2 month chip, and I heard some guy talking, and what he said just like clicked with me. And at that moment in time, I realized that I have a serious problem, and I have an illness, and I need to be here, and this is where I belong. And I should shut my fucking mouth and do what I'm told, and do that as long as it takes until I can get as far away from a drink as I possibly can. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I did. So that journey of 3,000 days began a long time ago, but it was just one day at a time, doing these simple principles that have honestly turned out to be the best way to live. And these principles have created great success for my life in business, for great success in my life, in my relationship, as a father, as a friend, as a son. they're amazing. So I'm thankful for that. But when I look back on the journey that I've been on over the last 8 years, it's crazy. It's totally crazy. But I wouldn't have it any other way.
It's amazing. Do you find, so I stopped drinking back in September. So I find, and I think we were both in Whistler. And I was like, I'm not drinking. That was in July. And then I fully stopped in September. But then I was like, I feel so awkward around people because they're like, what's wrong? Like, why aren't you going to have a drink? Like, what's wrong with you? And it's like, I just don't want to drink. Like, do you find that challenge, like, or I'm sure it was an awkward challenge at the beginning, because obviously you have friends and stuff that drink and smoke and all that kind of stuff. So what challenges did you face with that kind of putting yourself in those situations?
So it's funny because I've had a lot of people say exactly what you just said, where they went off booze for a little while and they felt really awkward. And I think that that's a self-imposed awkwardness, because in your mind, or at least I can't speak for you, but in my mind, it's like, I should be drinking. I'm awake, so I should be drinking.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I'm saying like, well, people are going to think it's weird that I'm not drinking. The further I've gotten down my path, I've noticed that actually no one seems to care. I'm the only one that seemed to care. And
Yeah.
I still, to this day, when I go out to a restaurant, I'll order a Virgin Caesar because I just want to feel like
Part of
I'm getting something. Yeah, like I'm on the team, this is good to go. But now I like things more like kombucha or whatever, and sparkling, Perrier with some lime, and it's great. But so that's totally normal that you experience that, and I hear that all the time. But what was the second part of that question?
Just being like put in that situation where you're like around other people, but you already answered that.
Yeah. So I, in the beginning, you were talking about having friends and stuff. So what I did was I went and sat with my 3 best friends and I said, look, I started going to AA and I've done this before and I've never told anyone, but I feel like I need to let you know, like I'm in bad shape. And all 3 of them, I thought they were going to kick me to the curb and I was going to be at the end of our friendship. All 3 of them were like, oh man, we got you. We got your back. And then there was people that I knew I had to get away from, that I knew I couldn't hang around with anymore, because no matter what I told them, they weren't going to support it and they weren't going to change. And they were bad influences for me. And we were like oil and water. And so if I wanted to be sober, I need to stay away from them. So that was clear. I had to make that distinction. Who is going to be part of my life and who is not? And I didn't have a conversation with the people that were not. And I noticed they didn't give a shit. They didn't call to check in on me to see where I've been. And it's been years. And all of a sudden it's like, where'd he go? Like they probably just thought I died or something. But luckily my 3 best friends, they did support me fully. And one of them got weird about it for a little while, actually. For about 6 months, he didn't want to come around. And finally I called him out. I'm like, what's up, man? He's like, well, you're doing so good. And like, I don't want to be the reason that you slip. And I was like, if you're the reason that I slip, then I have something wrong with me that I am not doing right. Because there's billboards everywhere. There's commercials everywhere. Like I can't escape alcohol. So I want you to feel comfortable around me, and I want you to be able to drink and do your thing around me because you're not an alcoholic. And even if you were, it's not my place to judge you. So that's how that went down for me. But I'm thankful that they did have that support. Otherwise, I would have had to stay away.
For sure. I'm going to make my husband listen to this now, because with my dad being sober, he literally is like, he drinks. He doesn't have a drinking problem by any means, but he'll like drink upstairs in our room and keeps beer in our closet. Cause he's like, I just don't want to, like, exactly what you said. I don't want to be the reason why he starts drinking again.
So I'll be honest, my sister, she likes to drink wine. She by no means is an alcoholic. She'll have a glass or 2 of wine when we come to visit. And at first she would do the same thing. She would be like, well, I don't want to drink because I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. And I'm like, you're making me feel uncomfortable by not drinking, because now I feel like I've done something that's caused you to not live your life.
Yeah.
So like, please, like drink it, do your thing. Like it's not like, as long as it doesn't go into me, I'm good. So that's some perspective shift that maybe will help him.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And probably not just him, but lots of other people that I'm sure are in that situation. So is there anything that you find, well, you said spirituality, mental and physical, that kind of is a whole, is cumulative. So when you had that vision, obviously, I don't know if you were religious or spiritual before that moment, or how has that impacted you? Now you kind of have a trust in a higher source, in God or whatever. It's always such a controversial word because nobody knows what to say. I believe in God, but some people say universe, whatever.
Yeah. So, I'm really not, based on the principles of the program, I'm not supposed to talk about AA on any
Right.
sort of form of media, but what I can tell you is that recovery programs in general, and I'm not going to name that one specifically, even though I already have, are spiritual programs. They're not religious programs. So when
Right.
we say the word God, it's a God that we understand.
Yeah.
And that was really comforting for me because I didn't understand God, and I still don't understand God, but I know that what I connect to, this power that doesn't make sense to me.
Can't
I
explain
can't
it.
explain it to my son. He's having his own problems with it right now. Like, what is this thing? Like, I don't believe it's real. And he wants to be an atheist and all these things. I'm like, cool, man, do your thing.
Yeah.
But when I get a connection to a power greater than myself, which could be anything, like if you think about like lifting something really heavy, if you do it with 3 people instead of 2 people or 1 person, that's a power greater than yourselves. That teamwork is
Right.
an energy that you no longer can support on your own.
Yeah, exactly.
Your higher power could be anything. I was taught that you need to pray and meditate. And the only reason I did it was because I was told I needed to do it. And it's part of
Right.
our recovery process. But when I was growing up, we went to church. I never felt overly religious, but I knew something had to be there. I just never connected with that. And then when I was 19, my best friend got killed by a drunk driver. And then I felt like God was just an asshole and that he wasn't looking out for us. And that, why would he do this to me?
Yeah.
If this God loves me, why would he take him from me in such a shitty way?
Yeah.
And then I started to be like, you know what? There was no resentment. There was no like, I'm an atheist. It was just like, God's over there. It's like we're at a party and you see somebody you don't like. It's like, God's over there. I'm over here. Stay away from me. We'll be okay. I don't need you.
Yeah.
You don't need me, whatever. Right. And so I just kind of disappeared from the idea of spirituality. And as a result, I had a terrible life. So when I was told to develop a habit of prayer and meditation, it was very, very uncomfortable for me and very difficult. And I did it because I was told to, and I didn't want to do it, but I didn't want to go back to the life that I had before. So I was like, well, everything I've tried before has failed. So why don't I try something new? So praying was like god awful. Like it was brutal for me. And meditating was so bad. I could go like 30 seconds, maybe a minute, and then my head would spin with all these crazy ideas. So I did that for 3 years consistently with no benefit. No, I got nothing from it. And then one day, all of a sudden, I started getting something from it. I started getting some peace. I started getting some relief. I started getting some hope. I started getting some faith. The first 2 years of my sobriety were by far, and please, if you're listening to this and you're struggling, like don't use this as a reason to not, but I need to be honest with people. They were the worst 2 years of my life. They were horrendous years. I had terrible detox. Like my liver was shot. My whole physical nervous system was toast. I owed Canada Revenue $65,000. They started garnishing me. All this bad shit started happening. I was really tested. But through that, I just had this faith that if I did what I was told, it would all get better. And then one day, all of a sudden, the praying and the meditating started having an effect on me. And it started giving me the sense that if I let this go, it'll all work out. And if I leave this up to God, whatever God is, God's gonna take care of me. Now, you can't be irresponsible with that and be like, well, I like to gamble and God's going to take care of me, so I'm going to spend my paycheck on gambling. Like, it doesn't work like that. Or like, I have my paycheck. I'm not going to be smart with it. I'm just going to blow all my money. But one day God's going to make sure that I'm rich. Like or I don't want to be unhealthy, but I'm not going to stop eating shit food and get a gym membership because I pray about my health every day. My girlfriend
meditate myself into that, beautiful
Yeah.
skinny girl.
Totally. My girlfriend always says that you have to meet God halfway. So you can pray for things, you can ask the universe to deliver, but if you're not walking towards it, you're not going to get it.
Absolutely.
So I just started doing what I was told, and then prayer and meditation became an absolute must in my day. It's something that I have to do every day. If I miss it, I feel off. I wake up early so that I can do it. I like to wake up at 5:00 because at 8:00 as a real estate agent, my life gets crazy.
Yep.
I get 3 hours of quiet time where I can read, I can pray, I can meditate, I can, drink some coffee, and then life goes on. So that's my take on spirituality for me. And that works for me. And I found that the more I let go of things that I can't control, the better life is. And a huge result of that has been, as you've seen in my professional career.
Yeah.
I went into
You've done so well.
Yeah, I went into my professional career as a real estate agent and just said, this is up to God. I don't know if this is going to work. And if it's meant to be, it's going to be, but I'm going to work as hard as I can and let him guide the way. And turned out all right.
Awesome. One of my questions was, your strategies for, maintaining your sobriety. So I guess you would say your meditation and your prayer. Is there anything else that you would add to that in the sense of the maintenance of even just you as a physical person? Like, does exercising help? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, so I think we all have our routines that will help us feel good physically, and those are good to follow. But for me, I need the spiritual connection of the fellowship. So I need to communicate daily with other people that understand what I'm going through. I talk to my sponsor every day. He's very much like me. He's up at 5:00 in the morning. I laugh. I'm like, you're the only person that I can text at 5:05 and I'll get a response within a minute.
Yeah.
But when I connect with other people that have struggled with addictions, whether they're sober or not, it gives me this reminder of who I am and where I came from, and an ability to stay on the path. When I get away from that, my mind and my body react against me. And so when I get further and further away from my pack, I convince myself that I'm okay, and shit can hit the fan really, really quickly. And then I go and talk to another alcoholic, and I'm like, oh yeah, I am not. Unfortunately, this was a very uncomfortable discovery, but I found out through this process that I am not the center of the universe. And I need to be reminded of that, because once in a while I forget, and then things don't go so good.
Right.
So those are things that I do, but I still am heavily involved in my recovery program. I talk to my sponsor every day. I go to meetings, do the readings, and I follow the program. That's right. Important to me.
So the AA program, and I know you're not really supposed to talk about this, but is that something only available through AA?
No, everyone has their own different steps. And I think the traditions state that I'm not supposed to talk on it in a form of media if I'm trying to endorse it. So,
okay, yeah. But you're just talking about your personal experience. So
exactly. So, but that was kind of the, for lack of better terms, the OG recovery program. And then all the other different programs like GA or NA, they've all spawned from it. So they all have 12 steps. They're all basically the same, just a little bit modified.
Right.
So yeah.
Cool. So would you say, like, even like being sober, obviously you feel probably like a much better dad, I'm sure. But with your family relationships and stuff, I know that, like, personally with my relationship with my dad being an alcoholic, it's really been like a love-hate thing for a really, really long time. And so I struggle having that normal relationship, because in the back of my mind, I'm always like, well, I'm not gonna count my chicken. Like I'm always in the back of my head, I'm always like, I'm not gonna get too excited. Like I don't want to, get, what's the word?
Used to it.
Yeah, like, because he's gonna break my heart again, and then we're gonna have to start over. Like, did you find that your relationships with your family really were, transformed in that sense, where, they accepted it and they just kind of like went forward with knowing that you were serious about getting sober? And
so my family, my immediate family never really knew. After my friend passed away when I was 19, I moved from Edmonton to Victoria. So I kind of ran away.
Mm-hmm.
And when they would come to visit, I would be drinking heavily, or we met in Mexico or whatever, I'd be drinking heavily, but they always just thought, well, we're on vacation, so that's
Vacation.
what
Yeah.
we do. But my relationship with my son's mother definitely took some mending, and took some time to earn her trust, and now we get along amazing. We have, in my mind, we have the textbook co-parenting relationship. We just really support each other. She's married, I'm with someone. Now I have a stepson. She has a daughter with her husband, and our relationship is all about our son and how we can be the best parents we can.
Yep.
But yeah, it took her a long time to be able to be like, yeah, I've heard this shit before.
Yeah,
Like, I
exactly.
don't believe anything you're saying. For you though, with your dad, how long has he been on this path?
So it ended up being like an ultimatum at the end of November. So it was like you either
Oh,
are going,
recent.
yeah, this is very recent. So it was, and I know this is about you, but I'll give you the little story. So end of November, it was like an ultimatum where our family, my marriage, my children, everything was like literally falling the fuck apart. So we basically came to a point where we're like, you are going to have to stop drinking or you're going to have to leave. Like it
Right,
has to just be one or the other. And I mean,
right,
my dad raised me as a single dad. And of course, I have that little part in me where I feel like he took care of me. Now it's my turn to take care of him.
sure.
So then he ran away for a week and got really, really sick and really, really drunk. And finally just said, okay, I'll go to this, treatment center, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, like they've got room for you. You can go, like, I can literally take you like for tomorrow. And so I picked him up that night, went up to Toronto, and stayed at a hotel. He literally couldn't walk, couldn't talk. He was having like mini, like, I don't even know what it was, but I was like, I don't know what's wrong with you. You're like dying in front of me. And then so we went, so November 29th, he got admitted into Bellwood, Bellwood, I don't know if it's Bellwood Treatment Center or it's Bellwood in Toronto, anyways.
Right.
And now this program is like a $50,000 program for 50 days. And
Wow.
so luckily I helped him sell his house back last March. So he had a good amount of money. And really, this was going to be the only option for him. So he went. Actually, the day I dropped him off, they were like, okay, well, we have to do like the normal COVID screening and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, he has COVID. And I was like, what? He has COVID? And I was like, okay, great.
Uh,
Like, I wonder if I have COVID then, because I feel fine, but I just spent
yeah.
the night in a hotel with him. Anyways, they're like, so like he can go home and like isolate. And I'm like, that is not an option. I am
No
sorry,
way.
but like I can't. This is the one time he's agreeing to go. We're
Yeah.
here. I can't.
Yeah.
I cannot let him come home.
Yeah.
So they were like, okay, well, we'll take him and we'll put him in isolation, blah, blah, blah. Well, they ended up taking him to the hospital that night. He was in the hospital for 7 days and his
Wow.
withdrawals were like outrageous. Anyways, long story short, he ended up coming back to Bellwood. He was only there for 12 days and then he checked himself out. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is so like frustrating.
Yeah.
But he didn't drink. Like he didn't have a drink. So he left. He got. I wouldn't go pick him up because I was like, I don't agree with you leaving. So he got dropped off here, and we were like, one drink, you're gone. Like this is not a game anymore. Like, and of course, in the back of our minds, we're thinking like, he's gonna hide it. He's gonna be like closet drinking or something, right? Well, he went 79 days sober, didn't drink anything. So at Christmas, because he had done so well, at Christmas, I got him a trip to Daytona 500 for our family to go on. Something that he's always wanted to do. Like he was very emotional about the whole thing because he's, super excited and happy. And of course, he had a couple of drinks there. And I was just like, oh, like, is this my fault? Like I created this. But we've been back now, obviously, and from my knowledge, he hasn't had a drink still. So
Wow.
I don't know. It's a hard. It's definitely.
It's gonna take you some time to heal. And he's gonna have to get some time in before you'll start to trust him. And that's just
Yeah.
Or the deal. I always suggest to the people that are in your position is to seek some help yourself. Like
For sure.
there's Al-Anon and there's a lot of amazing resources and support that you can get because they get it. They
Yeah,
definitely get it.
for sure. Yeah, I would. Yeah, we're definitely looking into it. Bellwood had a program as well, but of course he's not there now, so I don't think
Mhm.
we qualify.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, it's definitely trying on everybody involved, right? Like,
totally.
and at the
It's
same time, you don't. The last thing you want to do is make them feel alone and not loved because
it's
that
a
just makes it worse.
Totally, and it's a family disease. It really is, and it's a funny thing because alcoholics and addicts, it's a disease of loneliness that we treat by isolating. So it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
And like, I mean, my favorite place to drink was in my bedroom by myself.
yeah.
Like, so weird.
Um, a couple more questions, just quickly. So, what are some misconceptions about addiction that you would like to dispel that you don't think?
That's a good question. I've never actually been asked that or thought about that before. Um, so I have had many conversations with people who have reached out to me because they know about my story or whatever, and they really just really have this belief that like if she cared, if she truly cared, she wouldn't do this, he
Yeah,
wouldn't do that. If they loved me, they wouldn't do this.
yeah,
There's no logical explanation for their behavior
yeah,
because I've had this conversation with them and they've told me they're sorry and they tell me they love me. So obviously they don't love me
yeah,
because if they did, they wouldn't do this shit.
yeah,
And I think that is one thing that if I can get that message across to
yeah.
people, I'm not saying it's okay and I'm not supporting what's happening, but
Doesn't
like
mean they don't love you.
when your dad had those drinks at Daytona, it wasn't because he like plotted and schemed to be like, oh, I'm going to get those in. It was because something in him went, this is okay. And
Yeah,
this is fine. I'm fine. Um,
yeah.
we have no control. We have no
Mhm,
control whatsoever on our thoughts. If
mhm.
I could control the way I thought, I would have never become an alcoholic.
Exactly.
I would have never gone down the path. If like I say to people all the time, like my best judgment and my best thinking got me into the rooms of recovery and suicide. Like, so if I'm left to my own devices, I am going to, even to this day, I say this to my girlfriend all the time. At first, she really didn't like this. And then she started to understand it. And it's hard we call you guys normies. Hard for a normie to understand and rationalize this. But people ask me, do you ever think you think you drink again? I go, absolutely. I fucking will drink again. I'm an alcoholic. Of course I'm going to drink again. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I know that if I'm left to my own devices, I'm going to drink. And the day that I start to think to myself, no, I'm never going to drink again, I'm totally fine, I've got this, is the day I go to the liquor store and start drinking because I forget and I don't have a conscious attitude of abstinence. Like I know that if I truly can say after 8 years that if I had my way, I would drink. If
Yeah,
I didn't have any consequences, if I didn't have any repercussions, yeah, I think about sitting on a beach all the time and drinking a 2-6 and drinking a 12 pack of beers. But I don't think about just having a couple beers. I think about the
yeah,
whole bottle and a full case.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
that's what I want to do. So I had to find comfort in the life of sobriety and find that faith and that contentment that I don't do this anymore. Like my
Yeah,
life is very much like this. I don't
yeah,
get excited when I have a really big win in life, and I don't get terribly down when I have a big loss. I'm
mm,
just like right in the middle. Like just the other day, we landed a really big client, and this is a huge deal for us. And I was like, cool. But at the same
I'm
time,
very much like that too. I'm
yeah,
very much like, don't my husband always says like, "Are you excited?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm excited." He's like, "Well, why don't you seem excited?" I'm like, "That's just how I've been conditioned to be. That's just who I
I
am."
mean, my first 5 or 6 deals, I was like clicking my heels in the air, skipping home because I got a client. But it just regulates. But again, to answer your question, I think one thing that I really want people that are struggling with a family member to understand, and again, it doesn't mean it's okay, it doesn't mean it's right. I'm not trying to justify it, but they need help. They can't overcome this on their own. And
Yeah.
so the approach that you've been using obviously isn't working either, because they're still doing it. So
Yeah.
try a different result, or try a different approach if you want a different result.
Right.
But I think the best way to get someone's attention is for you to start helping yourself. So like
Yeah.
when someone starts showing up to Al-Anon, and then their partner who won't stop drinking starts seeing that their husband or wife is going to Al-Anon and getting support and talking to these people in a program of recovery, now all of a sudden they're making changes. They're becoming better. They're becoming more spiritually aware. Something's going to change in that person, or it's going to get really bad.
Yeah. You said it's Al-Anon. How do you spell that?
A-L, and then there's a dash, A-N-O-N. And it's for the families. So originally it started out just as the wives, because AA was just all men. But then they realized that women are alcoholics too. So
Yeah.
over the time, it's become for the families. And then there's Alateen for teens that have struggled with parents have addiction and things like that.
Okay.
So yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I didn't even know that myself. And I mean, as a family member, you get to a point where you just want them to get the help first, right? You always have it in your mind that they need the help first, but I mean, it's not a bad thing for you to get help too, right?
You need it, and you need the support, and you need the tools. Like my sponsor told me when I first came in, he's like, you're using a hammer when you should be using a screwdriver. So you learn over time. He used that analogy because I was in construction, but like you learn over time which tools to use at which point in time, right? One of the things is that I adopted early in my sobriety was I'll always drive everywhere I go. If I'm going somewhere where people are drinking, I will never take a ride, because if for some reason I need to get out of there, like now I got my keys, I'm gone. I have that exit strategy. So things like that. You'll learn tools in those programs for sure.
Right. Well, it's an amazing accomplishment that you've been able to, overcome this and be conscious about it. I think that's one of the main problems is people don't sit and actually think about, what, why do I do this? And for a lot of people, it is a mental illness. I believe that my dad is not angry when he drinks. He's not, he's like 100 pounds soaking wet. So of course it does affect him physically, especially when you're mixing it with narcotics. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. I lost my train of thought.
No, it is. It's a mental. It's a thing. It's a mental illness.
Definitely.
It's a mind, body, and spirit, which is very hard for people to comprehend. But it's a tricky. We say it's cunning, baffling, and powerful. We don't quite understand it, but it's like, whew, it'll get you.
Once you become aware and you become conscious of it, I think that's a powerful thing in itself. I think for sure.
Yeah, actually, we were my son and I were at Costco the other day, and out of nowhere, he's 14 now. So I got sober when he was 5. He turned 6 a month later, and he's 14 now. And we're walking in Costco, and all of a sudden he just looks at me and goes, "I'm really glad you don't drink anymore." And I'm like, "Yeah, me too." Thanks. Like that was it. That's all he said. But I was like, cool. So they notice, they pay attention. He says that he remembers when I drank. And at first I was like, they can't be true. But then all of a sudden, like things started coming out. Like I used to call weed my medicine. So I'd get out of the truck and go smoke some weed, and then get in the truck and drive my 6-year-old son around, or 4-year-old son. So like, that's how crazy we are. And I thought that was okay. But he's like, yeah, you used to have your medicine. And I'm like, you noticed that, hey? He's like, yeah, I did. And so they remember, like little kids pick it up. So, but luckily I cleaned it up when he was young enough that I don't think it ever had an impact on him. And I hope it never does. So
I will disagree. I think it's going to have a huge positive impact on him.
The sobriety side of it for sure. Yeah. I dragged him to meetings for the first 2 years of my sobriety every Friday, because like every Friday where I had him, because I couldn't miss the meeting. And I'm like, I don't got anyone to watch you. You're going to sit in the corner and color, play on the iPad, do whatever, but you're coming. I need this. And he came and he picked things up there too. So, but yeah, he's seen a huge transformation, which hopefully sticks with him.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I think it's super important for our kids to, and it not to be hidden from them. Like if, like I joke about, my gambling issues when I was in college and stuff, and I used to like let Jaden do some scratch tickets and stuff. He'll be like, "Oh, let's do some scratch tickets." My husband's like, "Do you really think that's a good idea?" I'm like, "Yeah, probably not."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
right? You just,
The best thing you can do for your kids is be honest with them about everything, I think.
yeah,
You don't need to be, go into gory details, but just tell them the truth. They don't want you to lie to them. They just want to
I know.
know. I think if someone would have been honest with me when I was a teenager about what drugs and alcohol were all about, I probably would have maybe gone a different way. I don't know, but
Definitely.
it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, I think that we've touched on a lot of really positive notes, and I think that anyone listening, obviously, I think will be inspired in a positive way. I think because even though you're probably, sitting or listening or watching or whatever and thinking, like, "Fuck, this is ever going to work for me," like it can totally, totally work for you.
Yeah, just don't think about the rest of your life. Don't think about like that's the thing is if you're just getting going, if you're like, hey, this is a problem, I need to stop. I was like, how am I gonna get through weddings and birthdays and Christmas and all this shit? How
One
am I
day,
gonna like I gotta do this forever? I gotta do this for the rest of my life. Like, and then they tell you all the time, like, think about it just one day at a time. And at first I was super corny and such bullshit, and I didn't want to buy into it, but then I just bought into it. And I was like, okay, I'm just today. Like I can drink tomorrow. Like I'll do it tomorrow or next Friday worked for me. And I got a buddy right now that just took 6 months of sobriety. And he says it to me all the time. Hey man, I'm 2 months sober, but I'll drink next Friday. Hey, I'm 6 months sober. I'll drink next Friday. And that works for him. But don't think about the whole life. Don't think about the rest of your life. Like give yourself the permission to say like one day, maybe I will drink again, but today I'm
not
not going to
today.
drink again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not today. Amazing. Well, I really appreciate you hopping on, and I know I'm going to have you on the real estate podcast as well.
Yeah.
I'm excited to chat with you over there on the Redefining Real Estate podcast. But for now, we'll leave it at that, and we hope that you've learned something and you were listening and transformed something in your life. Thanks so much.